Hi, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Sue, and today we're going to do something different with chicken. Are you looking forward to having something different to do with chicken? Well, stay tuned because we're going to make kotopita, chicken pita. Kota is chicken, pita is pie, but this is not going to be your ordinary chicken pot pie. This is going to be something really just bursting with flavor, and you'll enjoy it. Just a reminder, today's recipe and all the recipes we've used on this show can be found on our website, tweeten.com. Be sure to look us up. You'll find our recipes, you'll find links to other Greek sites that will give you insight into Greek culture and, of course, more opportunities for recipes. You'll find a way to order tapes of these cooking lessons. You'll find a way to email me, and I do enjoy hearing from you. To make this wonderful chicken pie, you need to have chicken. And you need about 1.5 to 2 pounds of shredded, boneless, skinless, cooked chicken. It doesn't matter where you get your chicken. You can get it from the frozen food section and get it already in chicken breasts that are boned and skinned for you. And this would be a perfect dish for leftover turkey. Something different with all those Thanksgiving leftovers. Try this. But you need 1.5 to 2 pounds of cooked shredded chicken. You need 1/4 cup of long grain white rice. You need at least 2 onions. They'll be finely chopped, and if you wanted to add extra color, you could use 2 small bunches of green onions instead. You need anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 cup of pine nuts. Now this is optional, but it is very Greek and it adds an interesting texture. You need a couple of eggs. Now you need to flavor all this, and you have 2 choices of flavorings. The one flavor is this bunch right here. You can flavor the chicken mixture with some cinnamon, some nutmeg, a little bit of allspice, and some golden raisins. This will make a very sumptuous, sweet, slightly sweet filling, and it's just going to be delicious. Now this is one way to go. However, there's another way to go with this chicken mixture, and that's over here. You can go with a combination of cheese and mint. You would need 1/2 cup, either feta cheese or hard Magitra or even Parmesan cheese, and then a couple teaspoons of chopped mint, either dried or fresh. Now all these, this is the filling, but you need something more than the filling. You need a crust, and this is not going to be any ordinary pie crust. This is going to be the favorite, phyllo dough. So you need 1 pound of phyllo dough, and you can find this in your grocer's freezer section. Now because this chicken pie requires phyllo dough, we've got to do things just a little differently maybe than you would otherwise. First of all, this was frozen phyllo dough that I purchased from my local grocery store. I left it in my refrigerator overnight to thaw. It needs to be thawed, definitely. But also, when I first started putting together all the ingredients for this dish, I took the phyllo out of the refrigerator because it needs to be brought to room temperature. Now, I'm going to get the filling ready. That's very important when working with phyllo dough. You've got to have everything ready before you dare open the package. The dough is just so thin, it can dry out so very, very quickly. So I'm going to set this aside and start working on my filling. Get everything ready before I even think about touching this package. Now here's my chicken. It's about 1.5 pounds. It's cooked, it's shredded. There was some chicken breasts on sale this week, so what I did is I bought some. And I poached them or braised them in a little liquid, and then I just removed them and took the skin off, got rid of the bones, and shredded it. But you could do anything you wanted, using any kind of cut of chicken that's available, whether it's the frozen boneless, skinless chicken breasts or chicken thighs, or whether it's something that's on sale, and of course, leftover roast chicken or leftover roast turkey. Either one would work just fine in this recipe. Just have it ready, cooked, shredded, ready for the filling. First step in the filling is to get the onions chopped. You need 2 onions. Or, for color, you could add 2 bunches, small bunches, of green onions, thinly sliced. Now these onions need to be finely chopped, and we're going to cook them before they get put into the filling. And the reason for cooking them is very simple. The pita is going to bake for about an hour, but that won't be long enough to fully cook the onion. And we really don't want to have any pieces of raw onion in there. So we're going to cook them. And also the cooking will bring out the natural sweetness of the onion. And that's something we're looking for in this pita. A little sweet touch. So it's just a matter of chopping the onions and chopping them finely so we don't have any big chunks of onion anywhere in the filling. And into the pan they go. My onions are all chopped, and what I need to do now is just saute them in a couple tablespoons of olive oil. I don't really want to brown them. I just want them to get soft and cooked. So a couple tablespoons of olive oil. And I'm just going to let them cook for a while over medium heat. I put the cover on my onions just to hasten the cooking, and they're just fine now. They're translucent, they're soft, they're not browned, and that's okay. This means that they'll be cooked and nobody will be biting into a chunk of raw onion in the pita. So now I'm ready for the next stage. I want to start combining things for the filling. So into a big bowl will go the shredded chicken, cooked chicken, and the onions that I just cooked. And now I need to make a decision about what kind of flavorings I'm going to use for this. Do I want slightly sweet and exotic, or do I want something savory and a little bit tangy? That's my dilemma. For the spicy, slightly sweet, and exotic variety, I would want a half teaspoon of cinnamon, half teaspoon of nutmeg, an eighth of a teaspoon of allspice, or just a nice pinch, and a half cup of golden raisins. Put these flavorings in with the chicken mixture, and you'll have something very, very exotic, spicy, with a slight sweet edge to it. However, if you want something tangy and savory, 2 teaspoons of mint, either fresh mint or dried mint, and a half cup of shredded Parmesan cheese, shredded or ground dried Magitra, or what I'm going to use today, feta, good old-fashioned feta. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go with this. I'm going to use the mint and feta. It's a hard decision. I would have loved to have divided the pita in half and had half and half, but I'm going to go all with this, feta and mint. That sounds good to me. I'm using traditional feta. It's already crumbled for me, so I don't even have to do hardly any work. However, you could get a cube of feta. Just about a half cup is what you want. and that'll add some nice tang and sharpness to this. And I'm going to use some fresh mint from my garden. However, if it wasn't doing that well, I could use dried mint. And I want about 2 teaspoons. A little bit more is not going to hurt. So I'm just going to cut the leaves off. I've already washed them and just chop them up a bit. This adds a typical Greek flavor, mint with feta cheese, and add just a little bit of color. And that looks about right to me. So there's 1 teaspoon. Another teaspoon. Well, now that's it for the flavorings. Now I'm going to do something else. I need to finish up the filling, and I'm going to get started on the rice that goes in the filling. I'm using the exact same pan that I sauteed the onions in. I just don't think there's a need to dirty up another pan. I've turned the heat up to about medium. I'm going to add, just a couple tablespoons of olive oil. And I want to saute the rice before I do anything. So this is 1/4 cup of long grain white rice. In it goes to be sauteed. And I'm going to add my pine nuts right now too. I want to brown them. Anywhere from 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of pine nuts. And I'm using 1/2 cup. So all I really want to do right now is just make sure that the rice and the nuts get browned. So I'm going to be just sauteing them over medium heat for a few moments. The rice and the pine nuts are really browning nicely. I need to have the rice cooked before I put it in the filling, obviously. It's 1/4 cup of rice, so what it needs is 1/2 cup of either water or broth. And I have some broth left over from when I was braising or poaching those chicken pieces, so I'm going to just use that, 1/2 cup. Turn the heat down, little dash of salt. I don't want to overdo it right now. And I'm just going to cover and cook this over a low heat, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. I think I'll check it after 10. I want to make sure that the rice is tender and all the water or broth is absorbed. Well, my rice is done. And it took a little longer than I had anticipated. I checked it after 10 minutes. Wasn't quite cooked, and it needed a little bit more water. So that's what you need to do when you make this. Just keep checking it. But now the rice is completely cooked. It's absorbed most of the water. And I'm just going to let it cool a bit before I throw it into the filling. While my rice is cooling, I'm going to beat 2 eggs. This will help hold the filling together. To my chicken, cheese, and onions, I want to add the rice and the pine nuts. Slightly cooled. They don't have to be cold, just not boiling. And just go ahead and add all the olive oil that's left in the pan. At this point, you might want to stir everything up and give it a little taste to check for salt. Don't taste it after you've poured in the raw eggs. But I think this is going to be just fine. I salted the chicken when I was cooking it. I salted the rice while I was cooking it. And everybody knows feta cheese has enough salt. So I'm really not going to add any more, but I will add some pepper. And now the beaten eggs. And just mix everything up and you'll have your filling. Make sure that the mint and the feta gets mixed all throughout this. So every bite of pita has a little bit of feta cheese to flavor it and a little bit of mint. Okay, that's good enough for me. Now I want to set the filling aside and get started on the phyllo. Okay, this is my pan. It's my faithful 13 by 9. So the first thing I'm going to do is brush this pan, sides and bottom, with olive oil. Want to make sure that nothing sticks to the pan. And I want to get this done before I even open the phyllo package. I don't want to waste any precious time when it comes to dealing with phyllo. Okay, that's good. Now you need to remove the protective plastic wrapper from phyllo and unroll it. If you look at this, what they've done is taken the traditional size and cut it in half so that it fits perfectly the 9 by 13, or fits almost perfectly the 9 by 13 plan. This would be just perfect for something like baklava or kado pita, something that doesn't have a real juicy filling that needs to be held in. But for today's chicken pita, I need to have some build up so I can fold things over. So you just watch and I'll figure out something. I'll maneuver something so I can fold everything in. Everybody ready? Olive oil's ready, my brush is ready, and my phyllo's ready. Scary thing about working with phyllo is sometimes you get a batch that cooperates and sometimes you don't. All right, here's my first sheet. Sort of okay. And because I want to make sure that this filling is going to be encased, I'm going to lay it out this way, widthwise, instead of lengthwise. I want this hangover. And I'm not going to brush it with olive oil until I get the bottom of the pan covered with some phyllo. There we go. Another sheet of phyllo, and I'm putting it in like this. All right, now I'll brush it. The reason I'm doing this is just because I want to make sure that this filling is enveloped by the phyllo. Okay, so here we go. This is a good trick to remember. If you have bits and pieces of leftover phyllo from other things that you've made, you can piece it together, especially for the bottom crust. It really doesn't matter. You can take odd shapes and lay them any which way. It really doesn't matter, as long as once you get the equivalent to one layer of phyllo that you butter it or oil it. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. The only time it's actually important for you to have whole pieces of phyllo would be the top of something, just because we try to make the tops look pretty. But what goes on underneath, forget about it. Nobody needs to know anything about what's going on. All right, so now this is going to make a nice envelope of phyllo crust for that chicken filling. And I'm just going to keep doing this till I'm just about done with this 1/2 of the phyllo. I've got enough overhang here, overlap, so I'm just going to start putting the rest of the phyllo right in the center. There we go, right in the middle, to make sure it has a nice solid bottom. And remember to brush lightly with oil. Try to find a good quality olive oil, one that's not bitter. Working with phyllo always reminds me of my grandmother, my Grandma Kulaks. She could make it. She could make phyllo by hand. She had that gift. When it was time, at Christmas time, to make baklava, pans and pans of baklava, she'd work her magic with the flour and water. We'd go over to visit her, and she had these thin, thin sheets of phyllo drying on her bed. On her bed, she'd put a nice clean white sheet on her bed, lay out the phyllo dough. She'd have it on her kitchen table. Can you imagine a bed covered with stuff this thin? It was just amazing. And of course, being the obnoxious kid that I was, I thought it was really funny to poke a hole in it. Yep, that was my contribution to the yearly baklava. I go and stick my finger in one end and poke a little hole. I didn't really do a lot of damage. I was just being stupid. I had no idea how much work actually went into making this stuff. Now that I just work with it, machine made, I realize, gosh, that was some skill that she had, and that was some obnoxious granddaughter that she had too. I think I've got enough on the bottom and the sides, so I'm going to put my filling in. All I want to do is just spoon it in and smooth it out so it's even. Okay, I think this is pretty flat, pretty smooth. Now what I want to do is fold over the phyllo. I want to keep the filling in. That's one of the reasons why you needed the sides oiled. Now some of this stuff, like right here where it's getting kind of thick, you can just pull that off. There we go. And give this folded part a brush with the olive oil and brush it along the edges and just push everything in, push everything down. All right, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to put the top layers on. Now I'm just going to take what's left of the phyllo from the first batch and just lay it right down the center. And brush each layer with oil. Be sure to hit the edges too. Those edges need to be kept pliable. All right, this is my last sheet. And it's going to get just a little bit of extra attention. This time, instead of brushing it with olive oil, I'm brushing it with a little bit of butter that I have melted. And the reason for this is simply that butter browns very nicely. And so butter will give a nice toasty golden brown finish to this pita that olive oil just might not accomplish. I need to especially go around the edges because the butter softens the phyllo and makes it much easier for me to trim. When I talk about trimming, what I want to do is just cut off this excess phyllo, especially here in the corners. All you need to do is just hold the phyllo down and with the edge of a sharp knife, trim away. The final step before getting this in the oven to bake is to score the top. What I mean by that is to cut through the top phyllo layers. Don't cut actually into the filling, but just through the top phyllo layers. I want to bake my pita in a 350-degree oven for at least 45 minutes, probably closer to an hour. At 45 minutes, I'll check it. I want to make sure that it's all very nice and golden. It's been an hour and the pita is done. It's just beautifully golden brown, ready to come out. Doesn't this look just beautiful? I've taken it out of the oven and I let it cool for at least a half hour. I don't want to cut it, and I certainly don't want to serve it when it's boiling hot. Now, it's at this point, after it's been baked and been cooled, that I want to cut all the way through. Crispy phyllo dough on the bottom, on the top, chock full of chicken, rice, pine nuts, feta cheese, and a touch of mint, of course with onion. Boy, you just can't beat this. Better than a chicken salad sandwich and better than chicken pot pie.